Hey, I'm in my truck. I'm in Atlanta, heading up 75. But I was in there a little bit ago, and the guy was talking about a fidget.
Yes.
And that just brought something back. I run into a guy, it's been about 2 years ago, that claimed to have a fidget. I didn't know what it was. He didn't go into any detail.
You've got to be kidding. He actually used the word fidget.
Yes, sir. He just said it helped him get away from things. But, he didn't say, go into a lot of detail about it. But it just made me start thinking where I met this guy. You remember a couple of weeks ago you was talking about a little town in West Virginia, Point Pleasant, where the bridge fell?
I do, sir.
That's the town I'm from. And, talking about the man in black crawling around on the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And, the Mothman, I'm familiar with all that, but, I myself have never seen any of that kind of stuff, but I just thought it was kind of odd that this guy come on there and started talking about a fidget, and, I saw it.
You're kind of giving me the heebie-jeebies because, frankly, I didn't believe him.
Well, it didn't really click until just, probably a half hour ago or so. Right after he got talked about, he said fidget, and I was thinking, what if I heard that term before?
The following story from Dover, Delaware. Several flesh-eating pet lizards. Now, do you have pet lizards? If you do, you're going to want to pay attention here. Several flesh-eating pet lizards were found feasting on the corpse of their owner in his apartment in Dover. Police were called to this man's apartment. I won't read his unfortunate, his fate is so unfortunate that I just won't read his name. He was actually in Newark, Delaware, and all this happened Wednesday. And his relatives, got worried because they hadn't heard from him for a while. Didn't show up for work, and so they begin looking into what's happened. Has he vanished? Well, no. They found his body on the floor with his pet Nile monitor lizards feeding upon his flesh. The state medical examiner is presently looking at the cause of death, but they recovered 7 lizards from his house. The largest was 6 feet long and weighed 25 pounds. That's a big mother of a lizard. No question about it, and you may recall last night Penelope Smith said that we all eventually become food. In this man's case, the process was simply hastened by some days, that's all. Really, when you think about it. His pet lizards, well, who knows how a lizard thinks? I didn't ask about that last night, but it may well be that when we pass, and the lizards, of course, being flesh eaters, realize that their favorite person has now become their favorite meal.
I got a great story for you.
Okay.
First of all, I'd love to have the telephone number and the name of the guy that was talking about fidgets, because I was sitting in a bar in Las Vegas about 3 years ago.
Yeah?
And I was it's at the corner of Decatur and Spring, which is a couple miles from the Mirage.
Yes.
And the guy gave me one of these fidgets.
Surely you jest.
I swear it's true.
You have a fidget.
I have a fidget, and I have a heck of a story.
All right, lay it out.
Okay, so here I am sitting at the bar. I've just gotten out of the military, or just gotten out of the military a couple of years.
Yeah.
Having a couple of beers, this guy gives me a fidget.
Yeah.
I go home, I'm playing with this fidget. I'm following the instructions of what this guy tells me sitting in a bar. You know how everybody tells you a story in a bar?
Of course.
Well, I find myself in 1986. And
Well, wait a minute. How long ago was this?
This was in 1992.
So you suddenly split back to 86.
1986.
Wow.
So I'm in 1986. I'm extremely confused. I am still in Las Vegas. And I decide, well, maybe this guy and this guy's fidget, there's something to it.
I'm sure.
So I start concentrating on getting back home.
How did you realize that you had flashed? I mean, Vegas is a 24-hour city. Now, of course, they've been blowing up and imploding buildings and changing it a lot, but
how did you suddenly realize you had blown back to 1986?
Well, I lived in an older apartment complex off of Fremont.
Right.
And I got up and I walked next door to what was a 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
When I laid down, and there wasn't a 7-Eleven, it was a Stop and Shop.
Oh my God.
And I looked in the paper and I saw the change of the date, and of course I thought that I was dreaming.
Now, you couldn't have been utterly, totally surprised because you knew, or at least you had heard, what the fidget was supposed to do. So you must...
How many times? I mean, you sit in a bar, and people tell you bar stories all the time. How often do you believe that kind of stuff?
Nevertheless, with the reality of your popping back to 1986, that story must have come immediately to mind.
Well, it gets better.
Okay.
I am frightened. I decided that I should try and get a hold of my parents or friends or somebody and tell them what's going on.
You know what the danger there is?
Well, I'm familiar with paradoxes, but I thought that under the circumstances, until you're there, you don't know what you're going to do.
Well, sure, of course, that's true. But, I mean, isn't there the possibility you could have run into yourself? That would not be good.
Well, in 1986, it was highly unlikely. But anyway, I grabbed the paper, I grabbed a beer, I went back to my apartment, I sat down, I concentrated, I focused on trying to get back to my basics,
sure,
get back to home, getting back to what was real.
You bet.
And I found myself in 4th century England.
Oh, my God. You must have received one of the free fidgets, because he said they ranged from free to $100.
Well, this was obviously free.
Yeah, obviously. Not calibrated, whatever. So you were in 4th century England?
Correct.
Oh, man.
They don't speak English in 4th century England. It was a litany of different languages. I was treated like I was a foreigner.
Well, sure.
I'm only 5'9", but I was still towering over almost all of the women and the men.
Interesting. That's very interesting. In other words, you were far taller than anybody else generally around at that time.
That's correct.
I was going to suggest perhaps they would put you on the rack and stretch you. They did those things in those days. And
as a matter of fact, the rack probably, and a tool of the Inquisition, wouldn't have been built for 1,000 years or more.
I'm sorry. My timeline was off. All right, so there you were, tall and out of place.
I was found myself in what is present-day Gloucester. The Latin term in those days was glevium. Again, it was a hodgepodge of language. They called me the Krieger. They called you
the Krieger?
Which is German for warrior.
Why did they consider you to be a warrior? Because of your size?
Well, I found without able to speak a language, not knowing where I was, disoriented, no skills to speak of, completely disoriented. I found myself in a situation where I was a slave. And the only skill, the marketable skill I had at the time was my skills as a fighter. They certainly didn't understand like concepts of current day martial arts or boxing.
So in other words, to make a living, you had to beat people up.
As a matter of fact, I worked for at that time the King of Gloucester, or Glorious was his name, and found myself as a men-at-arms, and was stuck in England for the better part of 25 years.
Good heavens to Betsy! How did you get back? You fidgeted your way back, I suppose.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, I fell ill.
Yes.
There was a Saxon invasion from the north. I was wounded in a battle. I was about to pass on.
Yes.
And I found myself back in Las Vegas of 1992.
From death's door back to Las Vegas.
And I've been looking for the guy and his fidgets ever since. I would love to get my hands on him.
All right. I bet you would. I appreciate your story. Never in a million years would I have the expectation that Serious fidget call. A fidget is a time device, very simple one, which ranges in price from free to $100. He said that I would get calls. And as you have heard, we have had how many calls now? He also said he was going to send me a fidget.
Interesting times, to be sure. First time caller line, you are on the air. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
First I have to prod him with my electromagnetic stun gun facilitator here to get him to talk a little bit here. There we go. There, got a little electricity there. Okay, now, can you talk to the Art, Max? Can you talk to him? What was that talking? Was that talking?
Hit him with the gun again, sir.
Yeah, okay, let's get the gun out. There we go. That's at 400,000 water, I think.
Okay.
There we go.
That'll get him going.
Does that scare you? You gonna talk now? You better start talking. I know. I'll try the old harmonica.
Now you're hurting the animal.
I think they're saying, "Shut that thing."
You know what?
What was that?
That's it. You know what my comment is? That dog wasn't even phased with the 400,000 volts. But that harmonica, that hurt. That obviously put that poor animal into pain. Oh, boy, the nighttime. Maybe one day I'll tell the story. Don't use a Ouija board. Don't screw around with the Ouija board. That really is a lesson that you ought not have to learn the hard way. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Morning. In 1958, I was 10 years old. It was a family tradition that we would meet at my grandmother's house on Easter Sunday. My mother had gone up on Friday, and my father was an Atlanta City policeman. Big man, never saw him afraid of anything in his life. Mm-hmm. He picked me up, and we headed for a small town in Tennessee. On the way up, all my life, and my brothers and sisters, we'd passed this house that had an iron gate, and we called it the haunted house. My dad's, I stopped. I said, "Dad, can we stop and look?" And we didn't have anything to do, and he wasn't too eager to get to my grandparents' house too early. So we got out and went in. Dad walked up on the front porch, and I started up a flight of stairs inside. And, like a kid with a little bravado, I ran right to the top of the steps. As soon as I got to the top of the steps, there was about a 3-year-old girl standing looking at me. A little blonde-haired girl, nothing extraordinary about her. And I said, "Dad, there's a girl up here." My dad thought maybe some squatters were in the house. And he ran up the steps behind me, and as soon as the little girl saw my dad, she just went straight across the hall into a bedroom and slammed the door. My dad walked up to the bedroom door. My dad was a big man. He was not afraid of anything. He pushed the door. The door pushed him back so hard he almost fell down. That made my dad mad. He got up and gave the door the boot. The door flew off the hinges, and we went in the room. It was about a 11 by 11 bedroom, 2 windows going outside, and my dad went over to them and couldn't open either one. There was a closet in the room. My dad opened the closet, and the closet was just 4 walls, wood panels, solid. My dad knocked on everything in the room. He knocked all over the floor, and we found nothing. So my dad and I went back outside, and my mother was related to the sheriff in a small town right where we were. And my dad went down there. He thought that people were squatting there, and it also alarmed him that the little girl might be in some kind of trouble.
Sure.
My dad told the officer there what had just taken place, and the officer went into the chief's office, and the chief was related to my mother. And the chief came out and called my dad and I into another office. And he opened a file cabinet, and he pulled out a file, and the file was a newspaper article. That house had belonged to a doctor that the company had brought in there to treat their miners. The doctor was in Atlanta. The doctor's wife evidently had a boyfriend. And the doctor came back to his home. His maid told him that his wife wasn't there, that she was downtown. He went downtown. He shot the lover. He shot the mother, went back to the house, and shot the little girl and shot himself.
Oh, my God. And so that little girl, or her spirit, or what was left of her, remains in that house.
The article went on to say that people heard the little girl. He shot the maid also, but the little girl was the last alive, and she went running up the steps screaming, and then a gunshot.
Wow. I really appreciate your story, sir, and your call.
You claim to be a man in black. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
It is.
You can call me the Auditor.
I don't know if I like the sound of that. The Auditor. The Auditor. All right. What is, if you could give us a brief description of, like a job description, what is it that a man in black does?
Well, he looks around the field and sees how things are going, and then he reports back to the hierarchy how it's working out.
We hear...
Now, that's for me as an auditor.
As an auditor. Mm-hmm.
Those that you saw in the movie, which was a hoot and a...
I didn't see the movie.
Okay, you didn't see it. That was a joke. That was propaganda.
I understand. But you're telling us there is no question about it. There are real men in black.
I can only assume so from the casebook of Men in Black and the author you had on the other night.
Now, wait a minute. I thought you just said you were a man in black.
Yes, I am a man in black, but I'm a human one, and they are not.
So you are, well, when you say you are the auditor,
yes,
what function?
I tell the hierarchy whether or not their functions are functioning correctly and whether they need to be updated or not.
All right.
They do need to be updated.
I see. So the men in black are not human. We frequently hear they don't have lips, for example.
Right.
And they are combination biological,
exactly,
robot type things.
Yes. Let's use the analogy of insects. They would be pupae drones who have had some samples of human genetic material impressed upon them for the temporary purpose of executing certain missions for the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. And as auditor, you simply keep track of what they're doing, their job, whether they're doing it properly, whether they're functioning properly.
Yes, and whether society at large is glomming onto what they're doing.
Well, the mere fact that I'm opening a line for Men in Black, obviously...
Yes, obviously they need updating. They've become so rickety and archaic, their files are so full of holes that they need a new paradigm.
So occasionally a man in black just like poops out and falls over, or what?
Well, look at the description of them. As you said, you gave the physical description. They look like they were just minted hatched out of an egg or something.
Yes.
They wear old, archaic clothes. They speak in stilted, archaic language. They drive old cars and so forth. They're out of date.
So they're kind of like Commodore computers, the old Commodore 64.
Yes, I have one too, the Executive 64, the portable model.
All right, well, thank you very much for your call. I don't know if I believe a word of what you said. You're not going to believe what they're about to do in Australia. Oh, my. In Canberra, from Canberra, this is incredible. A lawmaker's call to wipe out all cats in Australia because they prey on wildlife raised howls of protest Friday from animal rights groups and the country's pet lovers. Richard Evans wants Australia's nation, that is the entire nation of Australia, to be feline-free by 2020. And get this, called this week for unleashing a fatal virus on wild cats that roam the outback, killing birds, native animals, and so forth. He called for a law requiring pet cats to be neutered so they cannot breed and eventually will die out. Until then, a cat registry. You can register your cat. And cat curfews. Now, how do you put a curfew on a cat? Should be put in place. He said, quote, I'm calling for the total eradication of cats in Australia, end quote. He told Parliament that while cats may be playful and affectionate around their owners, they are killing machines when out on the prowl in suburbia. Evans blamed cats for the extinction of at least 9 native species. So he wishes to unleash a virus that will kill all cats. And I've got a big problem with this. We live in the days of international travel, air travel, and people are going back and forth, and business and commerce is going on all over the world, and I can feature easily this cat virus getting loose and killing all the cats in the world. Now, I suppose a lot of people who don't like cats wouldn't mind that happening. But what do you think of the idea of unleashing a virus that would literally kill all the cats in one country? Do you think it could be safely... I mean, I don't live in Australia. I don't like the idea of them killing all their cats, but I don't live there. And so if it was contained in Australia, that would be one thing. The question is, do you think it can be contained to Australia? East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello, how are you doing tonight?
Well, you're listening, right?
Yes, sir.
It's a little strange.
Well, I have something that may be quite strange for you as well.
Well, this is the home of strange, so go ahead.
I'm 27 years old.
Yes.
And when I was 18 years old, I met what I can only describe as a man in black, but maybe not in the same sense as what your callers are talking about tonight.
Well, we've had quite a range of men in black.
When I was 19, I met my father for the first time, and he and my mother were divorced early. I guess when I was a couple of months old.
Yes.
And my father came, and it was kind of an exciting thing to meet your father for the first time at that point.
Well, sure.
And we were taking a trip. I'm nervous, Art. You'll have to bear with me. But
I'm bearing with you, no problem.
It ended up, we took a trip. We took a trip to West Virginia, and I'm not going to say where I live, and that'll become evident in just a moment.
All right.
My father took me to West Virginia, took me out into the mountains, camping trip, and he relayed some family history to me, which is something that I'd never expected, and you're probably not going to believe this, but it turns out that my father explained to me that there was a curse upon our family.
Oh, no.
And
it's the last thing you want to hear from your dad.
No, it's, this is something like, what are you talking about? It's ridiculous. But to make a long story short, there in the middle of nowhere in the woods of West Virginia where we were camping, a man in black appears at the campsite. Okay. And this man in black told me that what was to be expected of me was that I would go and bathe in a pool, really nothing more than just a little hollow where a creek was running, and it filled up. I go into the pool.
Yes.
And for 9 years, Art, I was a wolf.
You were?
I was a wolf.
What was it like being a wolf?
It's terrifying, as you might imagine.
Well, I would imagine it has its high and low points. I mean, there are probably good things about being a wolf, too.
Well, it's
unless you're in sheep's clothing.
Well, obviously. To explain it is beyond words, but I can tell you this, that it's never-ending cycles of hunger. And
is your father still alive?
I have not seen my father since that time.
So you presume then that he might be gone now?
I have no desire to contact him.
No desire?
Well, can you imagine? I know I sound like a Fruit Loop, but I know that this is ridiculous. But I'm here to tell you that
you were a wolf.
Effectively, yes. I was.
Not all right. Let me be clear. Not a werewolf, not a supernatural wolf. A regular, everyday wolf. Wolf.
The best that I can determine, Art, was that I was transformed into wolf form. From what my father explained to me, that this is something that has happened to firstborn males in my family for.
That's a hell of a story. Look, I really want to know more because you are the first person to claim to have been a wolf, so that makes your story very important. Can you hold on?
Sure.
All right. Did you kill?
I've killed more times than I care to remember.
How would you characterize the experience of being a wolf? Above and beyond the constant hunger that you must have felt.
If you can imagine fear for every waking moment, and the only thing that can overpower that fear is the desire to eat.
And now that you're back to human form again, sir?
Art, I think it goes without saying that I'll never be the same. I've had something taken from me.
That's something that will always be with you and always gone at the same time. Is that about right?
That's correct.
You swear this is true on your old whiskers?
Well, hey, if it's not true, then maybe I am a lunatic. But all I can tell you is that 2 years ago, I emerged from that same pool in the forest in West Virginia.
That's a hell of a story. I appreciate the call, sir.
About 9 years ago, I was in Poland, and I made a point of visiting the camps at Auschwitz and Birkenau. Oh. And Auschwitz itself is actually this old converted Polish cavalry barracks sort of area that's, very standard factory-like brick buildings, and a lot of it's been very preserved. And it's a very compelling tour, needless to say. I mean, it's the sort of thing anyone who has any even faint doubts only has to go there. But there's one particular area that's most chilling on the tour, and it's called the Death Block. And it's just a very low, nondescript brick building alongside of a firing squad wall and bounded by barbed wire and everything else. And you go in, and it's old, worn wooden floors and rooms, each one with various instruments. It's real Chamber of Horrors stuff, a portable gallows, a whipping horse, etc. Then they take you down in the basement, and the basement is nothing but cells and small enclosed rooms, including, matter of fact, this is the place that they first conducted experiments with Zyklon B on Soviet prisoners.
Those would have been those waiting for their fate, huh?
Yes, when they were first trying to perfect the so-called final solution. And they're just tiny rooms with individual radiators in them with railings attached to the radiators, and they're not for comfort heat. Just nothing about the place is good. But you come to one particular room right near the end of the basement, and they had something they called standing cells. And if you picture a space about the size of a phone booth, only it's completely enclosed brick.
My God.
And then down at the base is about an 18-inch by 24-inch hatch. And they would put up to 4 people at a time in these for an indeterminate amount of time. And normally there was originally a whole wall of these, but they've torn most of them down, and so there's a painted brick square on one corner of the room, and then a little lower level of bricks that you can sort of stand in the middle of it, and then one that's knee-high, then one that's waist-high, then shoulder-high, so you have an idea. And the very last one is a complete booth. Well, our tour guide, I was at the tail of a small group, and had given us the whole explanation of it and everything else. And then he pointed to the complete one, and just with this kind of cryptic smile said, and of course, the doors are open, and that in case anyone wishes to try it for themselves. And of course, without waiting for an answer, he said, I thought not, and beckoned everyone out. Well, as I said, I was at the very back and going through the sort of ankle-high, knee-high, waist-high one. And I thought, you know what? I'm never going to be here again. And so when you go down, I opened up, and there's two hatches. There's actually a small metal grating out of just, iron, and then there's actually a wooden door that closes over that shuts out almost all light and air.
So in you went.
And I went, and I pulled the metal grating shut to take a look, and I stood there in the darkness, and I thought, all right, we can just close this most of the way. So I reached down, put my fingers in the air holes, closed it most of the way, stood up again to get a feel of the dark and claustrophobic. And I'm not claustrophobic by nature at all. But a moment later, you can imagine my surprise when I heard a very firm click and the wooden door closed.
Oh, my God.
And I heard the sound of the latch. I immediately dropped to my knees, and there was no one out there. There was no sound of footsteps. There was nothing. So I'm standing there. Now, this is also on Easter weekend, Art. And Easter weekend, Poland being a very Catholic country, the whole place shuts down.
So I'm sure you thought, that's it, I'm here.
I'm thinking this has become the Twilight Zone episode, from hell. They're going to find me on Monday or Tuesday, and my hair is going to be white, and I'm just going to be gibbering. But I thought, all right, just get a hold of yourself. There'll be another tour group because it was still early enough in the afternoon.
Well, you got your money's worth, didn't you?
Well, I'm standing there in the darkness, and it begins to dawn on me how many hundreds, if not thousands of people have died in the space that my feet are in.
Uh-huh.
And then you begin to realize that you are not alone. I mean, you can really and truly feel it. I took out my camera, and I sort of held up to the ceiling and aimed a flash shot down just to get a momentary look in there. No graffiti, anything else, this sort of nondescript gray-green paint and everything else. But as I stood there, I said, you know what? No one's coming. And I looked at my watch, which lit up, in 10 minutes, not another group. No other tourists, no sign of anyone. And so at this point, I began talking, and very quietly and apologetically saying, look, I just wanted to understand. It was not frivolous. If you were here and you saw me, you understood. I started at one level of cells and went to the other, and I wanted to know, and I still don't understand, but please understand, what I'm saying here. It's that there was nothing irrespectful about this. And just a lot of silence.
Any tour guide worth their salt is going to stop somewhere along the line and count. Hopefully yours did.
Well, what happened was, a moment later, I said, let's go down and kind of shake that a little bit and start talking, saying, hello, anyone out there? And, the poor tourist Polish that I knew. And I reached down and locked my fingers in the grate and began to push, and it swung out effortlessly. There was nobody there. Well, immediately I shot out of that like you can't imagine, Art. I mean...
I can't imagine. As I said then, you got your money's worth.
I stood out in the hall. No one in the hall. All the way down. These are old wooden stairs, and you could hear anyone on them. I walked back and backtracked the cells in this very quick sort of walk. Looked in, no one. I made my way out, and that evening, when I was in Krakow again, and at one of the bars, I started to tell the bartender the story, and he was pouring me hot mead, and he just continued pouring me mead for the rest of the evening without charging.
That's one hell of a story. I'm sure glad you got through. And as I say, you got your money's worth. Maybe that was a little lesson from, well, I don't know, above or below, somewhere.
Well, thanks for taking it, Art.
Thanks for making it, sir. You take care. That really was something. My God, can you imagine? I've done that a million times. I've been on so many tours, and it gets kind of old, and you kind of lag a little bit behind, and they show you these incredible things, and you're sort of wishing, well, the whole crowd wasn't here, and you could take a moment and contemplate quietly the importance of what you're seeing. I experienced some of that when we took the tour of Corregidor. Now, there's a haunted place, if there ever was one. You can feel it everywhere around you. And another, I don't have a story to match that man's, but I did go, as you know, to Egypt, and I had an opportunity to go into up to the very top of the pyramid and actually, lie in the sarcophagus. And without a lot of people around at all. And that was very lucky, very fortunate, but I had a feeling that just cannot be described, lying in that sarcophagus. And I had many quiet moments to do so and sort of try and discern what I was feeling. And whether that's something that your brain generates for you because you know you're in this kind of situation, or it's a real external feeling that's happening to this very day, I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you this. It certainly was weird. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning. Hello, hello. Goodbye. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art. With respect to this global warming issue, I think this is something that's been going on since the very beginning of time. After all, we've gone through innumerable ice ages and warmings. And
I know exactly who you are. You know I'm very good with voices, and I'm going to tell you that if you misbehave and I have to blow you off the air again, you'll be gone forever.
Well, let me just continue to say that...
do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Yes. That every word that has ever come out of the mouth of Bill Clinton has just been a despicable lie. And this...
Well, that's crazy.
That's not crazy.
Every word Bill Clinton has said has not been a despicable lie.
Let me give you an example. Our troops will be in Bosnia 1 year.
Yeah.
And they've been there 2.5 years already.
Well, all right. I recall Somalia. Do you remember Somalia?
Oh, all 44 were killed there.
Right. Well, all right. Were there despicable lies told by people on the right about Somalia and our mission there and what we were going to do and when we were going to leave?
The people on the right said we had no business being there in the first place.
Oh, but people on the right put us there.
No, sir. No, sir. George Bush was not on the right. George Bush was just the first coming of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, I see.
And besides, when George Bush left office, there were fewer than 1,200 troops on the ground in Somalia. The other 24,500 were put there by Bill Clinton.
I know.
Didn't want to go to Vietnam.
I know. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to call a troop extension, wherever it occurs, a despicable lie, well, then these despicable lies have occurred on both sides of the aisle, haven't they?
Yes. But what's going on here with this global warming thing is what they want to do is impose an energy tax on us. They want to cut down and chop down our standard of living to those of some mud hut third world country.
All right.
Bill and Hillary Clinton.
All right, hold it. You want to hold on through the break?
Okay.
Fine, because I do want to talk about this, and I'll hold you over. Stay right there. All right, back now to my caller.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
This is Rittmeister Gerhard.
I know who it is.
The NRA hippie. And we were talking about Bill Clinton being a liar and this whole global warming
what you said was Bill Clinton, every word from his mouth is a despicable lie.
That's right.
Well, it isn't right.
And I would, if rather than list the lies, I would rather ask other people to list what he has said that has been true. But the point of my call is this global warming farce, which they're trying to pull on us. They have two things that they want to do with this here. Number one is they want to slap us with energy consumption taxes.
Yep.
The purpose of which is to drive our standard of living into the dust. Number one.
All right. Let me stop you there and ask you a question. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we continue as we are now, allowing population to increase, allowing that population to continue to use fossil fuels at an ever-increasing rate. What do you think that's going to lead to?
I don't think that that's going to particularly lead to anything in this country. The most population increases are coming from other places on this earth.
That is true.
And so it's not really our problem.
It's not?
The fuel consumption is the standard of living thing here, and this is what they're going after.
So you think there's no chance that what man is doing on Earth right now is contributing to climate change?
Not at all. Not in the least.
Not a
the
chance.
slightest.
Huh?
But this is being used as an excuse, and this is my number 2. This is being used as an excuse to hand over to the one world order of the United Nations that which has up until now been our sovereignty. The sovereignty of our constitutional republic is being handed over to these one world order bureaucrats of the United Nations, which Bill Clinton is in lockstep with, and he has doled out our troops in 100 here, 200 there, all over the world. We have troops in over 100 countries. This coming from a man who did not want to go to Vietnam himself. I mean, talk about a despicable liar. He's also a coward, and he's a murderer, talking about Waco. But this global warming is a farce. Anybody that falls for it is a sucker, and I feel sorry for them. And I am here to help them, to show them the way to the truth. We have only in the last couple of decades been able to see things from above, from in orbit. We've only in the last couple of decades we've only had the capability to see thinning patches in the ozone layer. They have always been there. They have not just recently got there. They've always been there. But, tell that to Woody Gore. This is being used against us in a hysterical campaign of lies, disinformation, and half-truth, which is to destroy the sovereignty of our constitutional republic and to drive our standard of living down to that of some mud hut third world country.
All right, that just about brings us full circle. Thanks for the call. I wanted to let you go ahead and get that out because I wanted everybody to hear that. Now, that is the standard ideological myopic view of somebody on the far right who, with blinders on, will suggest that everything that is being suggested by anybody who has an environmental consciousness of any sort is an absolute lie designed to simply destroy our sovereignty, I believe he mentioned, and reduce our standard of living to that of a mud hut third world nation. His words. There's a lot of that point of view out there, and it's pretty frightening as far as I'm concerned. And I will ask the rest of you again now, because I think it is a very important question. Do you or do you not believe that the climate change, which is underway right now, is at least in part due to the activities of man? Yes or no? First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. What is your first name?
My first name is Debbie.
Debbie. Debbie, you've got a story for us, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Fire away.
Okay. I'm a nurse, and I was working midnights.
Another healthcare worker.
Huh?
I said another healthcare worker.
Oh, yeah. It happens to all of us. And I was making rounds. It was midnight, so I was making rounds. And this gentleman was really very well. He was supposed to go home the next morning.
Uh-huh.
And I walked into his room, and he'd been sleeping all night long, and he appeared to not be breathing. So I put my right hand on his chest just to see if there was any movement there.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up at the clock because just by the way he had looked, I figured I was going to have to call a code. Once I put my hand on his chest and I looked up at the clock, I couldn't move. I became like paralyzed.
You couldn't move.
I could not move. I couldn't move at all. I was struggling to make any kind of sound to call for help. My right hand was on his chest. My left arm, I could not move it from my body. I couldn't move my feet. I tried to turn. I tried to yell for help. I could not move at all. And, all these things are running through my mind like I'm going to get sued, first and foremost.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, someone's going to walk by, see me just standing here, and this man's not breathing.
Yeah, so you were paralyzed, actually.
I was paralyzed. I could not move. I wasn't short of breath, but I couldn't speak. I could not move. And my heart is just panicking and racing, and I'm stuck staring at this wall with my hand on this man's chest. And this went on for it seemed like an eternity, but it was about 3 to 4 minutes.
You think he was dead?
I believe he was dead, yes. I'm sure he was dead. And then all of a sudden, he shook in his bed, shook very violently, just like almost like an earthquake had affected that bed. It just shook very violently.
Great.
He sat straight up and grabbed my right hand, the one that was on his chest.
Wonderful.
And he said, Debbie, where was I when you walked in the room? And I said, you were right here in bed.
Yes.
And he said, no, I wasn't. I was over by the window, which is where I started looking. He said, I was over by the window yelling for you, hold on to me, I don't want to go, I'm not ready, hold on to me. You were looking right at me. You held on to me, and you kept me here. And I'm like, okay. And then his roommate heard all the noise from the bed. And Seth said, what are you guys doing over there? And so that's my story.
Well, that's one whale of a story.
Oh, it's awful.
The only time anything like that ever happened to you as a nurse then?
Yes. That, and it's because I didn't tell anybody for a long time because, it was very weird. It still kind of makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. But, it's kind of weird to be part of somebody else's, I don't know if it's a near-death or out-of-body experience or both, because he was floating above the room and could see me. And him.
I wonder what purpose you really served. What did you do when you had your hand on his chest?
I don't know. He felt I was holding him down, but I don't know.
Or holding him in.
Holding him in.
God. Okay.
He said he was just yelling.
All right, Debbie.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much for the call. There's another healthcare worker for you.